and you'll understand it in a minute. There is a unique situation, according to UN resolutions. There is no precedent to it, that the status of refugee is being transmitted from a generation to the third and fourth generation. That has never been in the history of the United Nations. You can be a refugee in a certain country, then you're absorbed or you move to another country, but you don't retain your status as they do with the Arabs who flee from Israel at the time, back in 1949, 1948 and 49. The issue of the Arab refugees made what I just said even more complex. Why? Because a very vehement, a very crucial demand by the PLO and of course Hamas and others, even Iran, you cannot understand why they interfere, or Hezbollah in Lebanon, what do they have to do with it, is that all refugees would be able to return to their original homes in Israel, original physical homes in Israel. And if the home doesn't exist, to the original coordinates in which the home was constructed, was built, and was destroyed so many years ago. So the previous Israeli governments tried to settle the issue by trying to propose a certain number of refugees that would be able to return to the state of Israel at large, maybe not to their original homes. All these propositions were rejected by the PLO. Hamas, of course, is a different story. You cannot have an agreement anyhow without Hamas. Hamas is not ready to any long-term agreement except for ceasefire. What's the problem there? The PLO says, including the re-elected chairman of Fatah today, that the future of the refugees, or the decision of a certain refugee, whether he wants to follow United Nations Resolution 194 of December 1948, saying that Arab refugees should be able to return to their homes as long as they declare their agreement to live in peace with their neighbors, is not a political issue, it's an individual issue. And they say, we cannot decide for them. They say there are 5 or 6 million refugees, actually descendants of refugees. They say, it's not for us to decide. Which is the reason, or the pretext, or the excuse for the PLO to refuse any quota on any number of refugees. Mr. Olmert, back in 2008, Prime Minister Olmert, I think proposed 10,000 in 5 years or something like that, which shows you the political limits in Israel. I hear from time to time my colleagues in the Knesset, from the left-leaning, so to speak, or the extreme liberal party of Meretz and the Labour Party, they sometimes, or always say, not one refugee will be able to return. One refugee. But suppose that I propose 50,000, not 5,000. Suppose I propose 250,000. It can never be accepted by the PLO because it's a quota. And they say, we cannot sign an agreement with you with that quota. Okay. Now, international law. Okay, again, I'm out of my area of expertise. People here in Israel do not fathom, do not really understand the meaning of the difference between a ceasefire agreement or any interim agreement and a final status agreement. And the difference is crucial. Because in an interim agreement, such as ceasefire or truce or armistice, how many of you in international law? No, okay, but you can read it. You can read about it. When you sign, when two parties sign an interim agreement, they can still adhere to their ambitions and their dreams without any interference. They say it's an interim agreement. Say I sign it, okay. It's an interim agreement, ceasefire. Still my dream is to extend, finally sometime in the future, to extend Israeli sovereignty over the whole area from the sea to the Jordan. If it's an interim agreement, I am not asked to give it up. I can live with it. If it's a final agreement, then it is impossible. In a final agreement, the parties must relinquish their long-term national or individual ambitions and dreams. Why? Or how? Because there's an article that must be signed that says, with this agreement, the parties declare that it signals the termination of all claims from both sides. Termination of all claims. And the PLO cannot, not that they don't want to, I would say maybe they are excellent people. Physically, they are unable to sign a final agreement that A, recognizes a Jewish sovereignty in any part of Palestine or Palestine, of the sacred Muslim land, and accepts a quota on the number of refugees that would individually be able to return to their ancient roots. They cannot sign it, because by that they would signal that they give up their plans, their hopes. They cannot. And some people here in Israel, and of course abroad, think about a coercion, an agreement that would be forced upon the parties. Maybe it can be forced on the Jewish democracy because of this or that. It can never be forced on the PLO. Why? Because the minute they try to force on the PLO disintegrates. There's no PLO. If they do sign, they will be physically eliminated within a week, 2, 3, or 3 months. By Hamas people, by the Iranian proxies, doesn't matter. But it will disintegrate. So therefore, an agreement is impossible as long as Hamas and the PLO are or present the leadership of the Arab inhabitants in Judea and Samaria. Forever, I don't say. I don't know. Under different circumstances, there might be a different agreement, even despite my will. But it has to be recognized. In a final agreement cannot be reached, which is why a colleague of mine, very well versed with PLO policy and Israeli policy, goes north and south to Ramallah and to Jerusalem, has been saying all along, the maximum that any Israeli government can propose falls short of the minimum that the PLO can accept. The name of this colleague of mine in the Knesset is member of Knesset Ahmad Tibi, an Arab who used to be a special advisor to Yasser Arafat, I should say, to arch-terrorist Nobel Peace Prize laureate Yasser Arafat. And this is the world we live in. Okay? That's what he says. I guess he would like to see an agreement. The maximum that any Israeli government can propose falls short of the minimum, I think is correct to the dot. I think this is about it. I'm sorry for the prolonged answers. A, my age. B, I thought it was still important for you. And sometime in the future you can ask a colleague of mine the questions that you have not been able to us. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.